Well, hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on a couple of wooden classic motor cruisers in and around Victoria, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing them both up for some pretty ambitious cruising. If that's the sort of thing that you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. I'd love to have you. And yes, well, it is raining, and of course, which is very welcome in our poor fire-ravaged nation right now. But it may be a bit confusing because in a moment I'm going to introduce you to trying to fix the stain aboard Poem in the blazing sunshine. It's going to get even more confusing because, well, here's Poem over here, basically varnished. But anyway, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, such is the nature of shooting episodes out of sequence. Alright then, well here we have a poor fellow trying to discuss the merits of fixing botched stain in pretty much a windstorm, completely oblivious to the fact that it's impossible to shoot decent audio under these conditions. Let me show you a little bit. I can take out the really nasty dark spots and then I'm just going to restain it. Yeah, see, that's not going to work. Okay, so what he's doing is he's actually using a Scotch-Brite pad and a little bit of acetone and trying to rub out the darkest sections of it in an attempt to try and fix this mess. All right then, well, carrying on in this audio recording nightmare, this poor gentleman is now telling you that he's bought the liquid stain version of the same color that he believes is going to make it easier to blend in all these irregularities, but, well, I'm not quite so sure. Okay, so it's a long way from where I want it, but it's as far as I can go today with the boat bucking like this. I'm pretty sure this technique will get me closer to where I want to be. Let's go do something indoors. Okay then, so this is a bit of a plan. I'm going to go out and I'm going to tow Poem around the marina and into a new slip way on the inside here where it's well protected, and I'm going to do it with the dinghy and the electric trolling motor, which I fully charged. But first I'm going to go out and I'm going to collect Lady Zephyrus, who's going to help me with my lines, and I don't want to use up any of that battery power, so I'm going to row. It also helps to have the oars. Gosh forbid there isn't enough battery to tow Poem around. Oh gosh. Let's go prepare. Okay, so I think I have this planned. There's still a little breeze, but it's completely in my favor. It's coming into the bay, and you can see by the waves, it'll take me, ease me, help me get in, around, and around the marina where I'm going to go up, basically past where the shed is. And by the time I get over there, there's no wind at all, or very little. Also, I've waited for high slack tide. Not that I need high, but just gives me a little more water on the other side. Not that that's a problem. So Lady Zephyrus is on her way down here, and I think we should be in pretty good shape. I'm going to tow with a really long line. The reason for that is if I do end up having to row, the long stretch in the line will ease some of the surges of the rowing. Otherwise, you're just kind of bouncing off the line. So the idea here is to let the wind do as much of the work as possible. Thanks, Lady Z! Yeah. Hello there, Poem. Now obviously the slower we go, the longer the battery will last, and the more effect the wind will have on this whole process. We're moving at a reasonable pace. Well, it easily made it all the way on the battery. Okay, I think we'll work our way in. Well done. Push the bow over some more. Well, and here we are at the new, kinder, gentler dock. It's going to be such a pleasure to work on her here. Just fantastic, and only a few steps away from the shed, so tools and resources and stuff pretty handy. All right, needs a little cleanup. I can't imagine it was too easy to tell what was going on at the end there. Getting the camera in exactly the right location wasn't all that easy, and turned out to be a bit of traffic. I'm going to put on these two covers that I made for these two holes here in the deck, and for starters I'm just going to bed them down in some 295, and if that doesn't seem like enough, I'll pop some screws up from below. There we go. Now this one, if I bring you in a little closer, there's a small split in this piece of wood, so I'm going to put a little tension on this block to keep that split closed. There we go. And I'm going to just put a little bead of that in there, which I'll clean up after. Nice. I am so pleased with the way I'm able to just blend in this stain. It's working out so well. Alright, so I've turned her around. Went relatively smooth. I don't know why I didn't film it. Anyway, so you can see this side is much more uniform, with the exception of just the back end there, which I've already added some more stain onto. So I know I can feather that in relatively well by applying the new stain, and I think it's going to look just fine. The problem is I may not have enough, but there's more where that came from. So I'm going to start with the decks, basically so that I can walk on them sooner.
Yeah, I love your boat.
Hey, thank you.
Awesome.
Well, I can definitely say I am so pleased with the way the stain worked on this side. It is so much more uniform, and I just love the color. All but the little area here at the back where I blended in with the original, and that's going to need just a little bit of attention, but on the whole it's looking pretty darn good, and I just love this color. Okay, all right, it's getting too hot to work outside. I think I'll work indoors. I want to tell you about an interesting product. Not that I'm entirely endorsing it, but it's something I've used for a long time. It's called Lifetime Wood Preservative by Val Hal, made out here on Vancouver Island. And I've been buying this for decades when I was building custom homes back in Nova Scotia. Now, it's a wood preservative. Now, I didn't really care about it so much as wood preservative because what I was using it on was eastern white cedar shingles on houses that I was building brand new. But I wanted them to look old right away, and that's what this stuff does. It's basically, it's a treatment, but it'll turn brand new cedar shingles into 20-year-old cedar shingles in 2 weeks. Or at least it did it for me. No promises, your mileage may vary. But it was always so funny. It comes in this little packet. It's like tea or something like that. Anyway, I have no idea what it is. Apparently it's completely non-toxic and all that. But I would mix it up and then spray it with a garden sprayer onto the finished cedar walls, and it would be just perfect. Okay, so why do I have it now? Because I'm going to I want to try and open this Ziploc, as I'm going to try and do. Anyway, I'm going to try and treat both the foredeck and the cockpit sole with it on Poem in an effort to preserve that wood, and this has been quite frustrating. Anyway, and possibly make it age to almost like a teak look. It's an experiment. Anyway, you mix it with a gallon of water and you're done. There we go. And then you just let it steep. All right then, well, I can't vouch for what this is going to do to this particular wood because I think it's mahogany and I have no idea how it will react to this, but I think it's worth a try. Now my experience is it tends to go green a bit at first, which I'm starting to see here, and then in a couple more days we'll get silver. Alright then, well, as tempting as it may be to do a time lapse, I think it might be days before that looks much different. Okay, let's do the cockpit sole. And out here I think I'll just pour it out. You know, I wasn't certain what this wood was back here, but now I can pretty much definitively say it's yellow cedar, which is so nice. That's due to the smell. Even when I was sanding it, I couldn't smell it, but now that it's wet, wow, can I ever smell yellow cedar? Well, it's definitely gone green. All right, so here's the foredeck 10 minutes later. It's definitely not silver yet, but it's definitely graying. I'm not saying that's the color I'm looking for, but if it goes a little more silver, I'd be really, really happy. If not, it's not the end of the world. The other thing is, I'm grateful for any preservative action it does to this mahogany. Just prepping for the final coat of tung oil, which will go on all the new sapelli mahogany, and then we can varnish everywhere soon, maybe tomorrow. Whew, it's getting hot. Whew. Oh, doesn't that look nice? Okay, now if you're new to the show, you'll probably at least know that that was tung oil I just put on here, which is my favorite first coat for all new sapelli mahogany, either inside or out. Of course, outside it has to be protected with many, many, many coats of marine varnish. Inside, I use actually a rather cheap consumer product called Wipe On Poly, because it works nice and it looks great inside. But anyway, outside. So the reason I actually put two coats on, I put a coat on about a month ago because I didn't know how soon I was going to be able to varnish, and I wanted a pretty thick coat to be able to sit on there and protect it. Gosh forbid I got a lot of sun or rain. So I had to sand it and smooth it out a bit, because if you leave tung oil on in a thick coat like this, it just turns in kind of a sticky mess after a while. The protection is there, but it's not, you can't varnish over it. So I sanded it smooth again, and now I'm going to rub this oil down to nice smooth finish, which will then cure overnight, or dry, or whatever you want to call it. Catalyze, I believe is the word. And it'll be perfectly smooth to be able to put varnish on it in the next day or so. I can tell you, it's hot though. It's going to be hard to varnish at these temperatures. That varnish is going to set up fast. Now I'd like to think this bulkhead will be bright mahogany again someday, but it won't be this year. So I do have to plug up a few holes. Now this will all get sanded, and the second coat of paint will hide all this. Isn't that lovely? And along the same lines, I made up a little patch for the old shore power inlet here, and I'm just going to adhere that with 291, which will do just a fine job until I come up with something different. And just to make sure it stays there for a while, I'm going to clamp it to the handrail here. And good morning. Well, this is a big day. This is varnish day, or the beginning of varnishing anyway. So as you can see, the sun, well, I won't point you straight at it, is over there, cooking the starboard side of Pome. But the port side will be in the shade for the next several hours. It's early, it's like 7:30 in the morning. And as soon as the dew blows off, which is pretty much now, I'm going to be able to get to varnishing this side. Now I'm going to begin with the windshield here, because we only have just a slight bit of sun and the bowsprit, and then I'll start at the stern and work my way up this side. Before I do any of that, I'm actually going to varnish the windshield sections and the forehatch here in the cockpit. Anyway, let's get to it. If you haven't been following the show for a while, because I haven't varnished in a while, you may not know that I use Epiphanes, I don't care how it's pronounced. I know I do it wrong. This is the varnish I'm happiest with. There are other varnishes, at least one more that I might like to try, the Tonkinese, but I haven't had access to it, and I have this right now, so this is what's going on the boat. This comes out of the can very, very thick, so it needs to be thinned with their own brush thinner. And the best way I can describe how much you thin it, it depends, of course, on the humidity and the heat and wind of that day, but as you're brushing it on, if it's too thick, the brush will drag. You can sort of feel that it's pulling. If it's too thin, you'll almost feel the texture of the wood below the brush, like you can feel the bristles sort of bounce along all the imperfections of the wood. If it's just right, the brush just glides. And it's the kind of thing, once you do it for a few minutes, you'll realize, oh yeah, that's the way it feels really, really good. There are other complications. If it's too thin, it will sag on vertical surfaces, so you might kind of move towards slightly thicker in that case. Of course, the thicker the coat, the longer it takes to dry, and the more coverage you get with each coat. So I'll leave all that to you. I tend to do it a little bit on the thick side, slightly, I suppose. For those who have been watching a while, you'll know that I subscribe to the Mop-it-on school of varnishing. What a perfect pattern. Which isn't necessarily the most elegant, but it is by far the quickest. Okay, let's get some varnish in here. And I'm going to take a guess with the, oh, there's a brand new one. I'm going to take a guess with how much thinner I think I'm going to need in the first round. I'm going to need that much. The other thing, of course, is the thinner does flash off fairly quickly. So even if you think you have it perfectly balanced, you may need to add some more as you're working. Okay. Let's put that in the shade and get our first victim. The very, very first brush of varnish on MB Pome. right then, so there we go. One quick mopped on coat and it's looking pretty good. Not bad at all. The self-leveling qualities of that Epiphanes is pretty good. So we'll let this dry today, turn it around, do the same tomorrow, and the boat will be generally protected from that point on. It's just as many coats as I can possibly find the time for. Okay, and good early morning. Well, it's back to varnishing today, early before it gets too hot. So first thing I need to do is flip home around. I'll do that using the dinghy as a tug. I'm going to begin by getting another coat on the windshield because this gets the bronze, or actually the brass strips around the windows here. I want to get as much varnish on underneath that as possible. Most other places on the boat I can revarnish easily without having to take too much apart, but up here I don't want to take this brass off again to do it. Morning.
Looking very nice.
Well, thank you very, very much. Well, hello there and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Bear of the Week, coming to you this week from the very cozy wheelhouse of MV Poem in the pouring rain, as it has been for the last little while. Okay, let's straight to the beer. Blue Moon's Belgian White. Now, this is not a new beer to me. This is a big favorite of Lady Zephyrus and I. She introduced it to me, and it is a fine beverage. Oh, and it's a bit foamy, so there we go. I think I can pour that without an accident. Well, it's true. This rain has made it a little difficult to carry on with the exterior of Poem, but I have lots of other things to do, which you'll be seeing quite soon. Anyway, really looking forward to this. It has been a long day. Blue Moon's Belgian White. Cheers. Oh, I just love that. It's got a citrusy orange even, but not overwhelming. A little vanilla. It's great. It's fantastic. Okay, on to the paperwork. Last week's winner of a Travels Geordie t-shirt is Jack Skookum Gates. Jack Skookum Gates, get a hold of me and we'll make sure you get your shirt. Cheers. So good. Brand new Patreon came aboard in the last little while. I'd like to thank Mike Morris. Thank you very much for coming aboard. I really appreciate the support. Cheers. And as well aboard on PayPal, David Hine has come aboard. Thank you ever so much, David. I really appreciate the support. And wow, off the Amazon wish list. Let me just get myself together here. This amazing little pump. I was going to say little, but it's actually massively heavy. What this is a gear pump. If you look in there, you might actually be able to see the gears in there. I don't know if you do. Okay, this is a gear pump that I'm going to use to do oil transfers for oil changes, both the engine and the transmission on all the boats. So I'm going to make up a little kit with a tank. It is much, much easier to use an electric pump and a dipstick tube down the dipstick to draw out all the oil from the engines and the transmissions of these engines than to use any of these little built-in hand pumps that anyway, it's a disaster actually. This is so slick, and I'm looking forward to the timely arrival because I'm about to do the oil changes on both Geordie and Zephyrus. So thank you very much, you kind individual who sent this, whom I do not know, because as always, it came without any indication of who sent it. So please, if you sent this lovely pump, let me know and I'll be sure to thank you properly. In the meantime, cheers to you, you kind soul. Oh, man, that's nice. And this is nice. Actually, the rain is so very welcome because of these terrible forest fires this poor country is under, and others, I'm sure. I wish it would just be a deluge across the country for as long as it takes to put them out. It's just horrible. But as inconvenient as it is for me, it's good news for the country. Anyway, cheers to rain, and I think that's as much of a segue as I could possibly give to this week's Word of the Week, which will be rain. Cheers. See you next week.
Buyer for this one yet?
No, I'm going to keep it. I like it too much.
It is a beautiful rig.